My name is Christina Royster.
My name is Deborah.
My name is Kelly.
My name is Jamara Littlejohn, and I will serve as your interviewer today.
The Born to Birth podcast is a critical component of the Born to Birth Project, a 3-part multimedia series bringing awareness to Black maternal health as a rising health issue.
The Born to Birth Project is made possible by Advocates Alliance, a granting program of Planned Parenthood.
The podcast invites space for prospective, new, and emerging mothers to share accounts of their birthing experience. Included are those mothers who have not physically carried a child, yet resonate with the journey of motherhood and birthing. Collectively, their stories offer a unique and valuable lens into the heart, mind, and realities of Black mamas everywhere.
Have you heard of the Black Mamas Matter Alliance?
I have not.
Okay.
So the Black Mamas Matter Alliance is a Black women-led cross-sectoral alliance that centers Black mamas and birthing people to advocate, drive research, build power, and shift justice.
The research reports that nationally, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. Hearing this, can you share your own exposure, impressions, or any personal experiences related to the conversation on Black women's maternal health?
Experience being a young Black mother, that you were already looked upon differently because I was young, because you're supposed to be married before you have children. Or I was stereotyped as, oh, that's all they're going to do is have babies and be on welfare. Getting appointments wasn't easy. At one point in time, my health care was state funded early on. And of course you were treated. And it was like almost known that, you had state insurance versus what I know it's like to have, AmeriHealth or Aetna through my workplace, where I was treated a whole lot differently than having a SIDS baby. I did have a child who passed away of SIDS, sudden death syndrome, at a very young age, and it took a real impact on me. Having her early in 1989, where the world was so much different than it is today, in terms of even though her probably would still be here today if she was born later on as technology grew. And then I said that to say that because I was on state insurance, a lot of things they took away from me. She had an apnea monitor because she was premature. She came home with an apnea monitor, and they only allowed the apnea monitor for a certain amount of months. And when she was 2 months old, they took it away. And when she turned 3 months old is when she passed away. Having my next son in 1991 and having insurance through my employer, it was a lot different. I gave them back the apnea machine when I was ready versus them taking it because the insurance was different. I was treated differently. I had a nurse come out right away for him because now they wanted to treat me different because now I had the SIDS baby. And so now it's, maybe more so afraid of maybe being I don't want to say sued, but something happening on their watch, knowing that I had that history. Care is definitely different just based on the color of your skin. And then it was the stereotype of my health insurance, whether it was state or if it was from my employer, that I seen the difference as well. Definitely.
Can you share your own exposure or impressions or any personal experiences related to the conversation on Black women's maternal health?
So you read and hear about stuff all the time about Black women dying after childbirth.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until you possibly are in that situation, how real it really is. During my delivery, I wind up having a C-section. And during the C-section, I heard the physician, say something along the lines of like, what did you do? But no one said anything further than that. So, and my husband and I are both in medicine. I'm a nurse and he's a PA. So we're, familiar. Right. And nothing was said that entire day after she was, delivered. the next morning, someone came in and they're like, you need a blood transfusion right away. And I was thinking, wait, what? Like, we didn't hear anything. No one said anything. No one mentioned labs, like prior to that time. But because I'm familiar with, a little bit of medicine, I'm thinking, did I hemorrhage during my C-section? And they just didn't say anything to me. So I wind up having to get a transfusion that next morning because my hemoglobin was 5.6, which is extremely low. It should usually be between 14 and 16. And that's just an example of like what I experienced.
Right.
That could have turned really bad hadn't someone jumped on it. But it might have just I'm thinking it was overlooked. And I think sometimes we are not treated as well as others when it comes to healthcare sometimes. And I hate to say that because I'm in healthcare. But you have to advocate for yourself. You have to, and it's hard when you don't have a background in it, or you don't know someone who can tell you to ask these questions. So yeah, I feel like I got a touch of that firsthand, being in the hospital.
My initial is that I don't doubt that statistic at all. I feel like it's a very realistic statistic, and I feel like one that is sad to hear, but also is one that is supported by different foundations of our healthcare system. And I feel like something that to debunk or even to decrease would take more than just, better OBEs or more Black nurses, more Black professionals. It takes more than that. Because I had first went through the route of midwives because I've always wanted to have a home birth. That's still on my list of things to do, is to have a home birth and to also have a water birth. And so that is actually why I sought out a midwife, so I could have a water birth and kind of fulfill that. But instantly I felt kind of redlined, and they kind of made it very known to me that I was already someone who was predispositioned to different risks, and that taking the route that I was trying to take just wasn't something that I guess they were willing to do. And I feel like that alone is something that I think heavily attributes to that statistic that they reported. So I had found that I was getting a lot of pushback when I was reaching out to the midwife that I was reaching out to in the agency. And I was getting a lot of pushback from them, and just kind of like, just accept that you're miscarrying. Just go ahead and put your feet up. Like, you'll see blood in X amount of days. And there wasn't a talk about what that would be like afterwards, to expect how that would feel if that was the case, who I could reach out to for resources. That wasn't a part of it. It was just kind of like, this is what we're saying is going to happen to you. Go ahead and you take time to take that in, and we wish you the best. There definitely should have been the opportunity for resources, the opportunity for therapy resources, things of that nature. And I wasn't offered those things. And I have little to no doubt that it's because of just me being a Black woman and being so young, and them just having the idea that, oh, well, she can have another, she can try again. And it's just kind of like, okay, we're just going to walk her through enough and then she can just figure it out, which is what I know leads a lot of people to not seek care, or to hide their pregnancies until they can't, or feel like it's not even worth going to an OB and finding an OB within your network that's going to listen to you, because they're not going to listen anyway. And it's hard to battle that constantly, and then to also still be going through the natural body changes that your body is going through to support this baby that you're making. And then to have a healthcare system not support you while you're making those choices, and while you're trying to figure out what you want for yourself and what you want for your baby and what you want your pregnancy to look like. And definitely in my research, I've just seen there's a constant correlation between race. I've seen that, a lot of times finances are brought into it, and then those things do attribute, but there are Black women who make 7 figures who still die. There are Black women who make 7 figures or surplus, or they sit in these big political seats, and they are these women who are ambitious, and they've made a name for themselves, and they still fall short when it comes to their maternal outcomes, or their children fall short because of the healthcare system. And so I feel like that alone can kind of break down the fact that it's not just economic status. It's not just the things that we kind of think of, the socioeconomics and all those things that we kind of think of. Oh, well, it's only Black poor women who are dying. It's only Black uneducated women who are dying. It's only, and those kinds of things. And that's not the case. And I feel like I'm definitely a person who can say that not being educated wasn't something that attributed to my pregnancy story and my motherhood story, because I am educated and I was working on being educated, and I still had similar instances where it could have gone very left. And thankfully, my support system helped me for it to be otherwise.
Absolutely. I have to be honest, like listening to you talk, I have chills, and I also have like tears in my eyes, because it's like, it is very sad, and it's like such an everyday reality for Black women to not be given the care that they deserve when they are in such a delicate position of literally giving life. And yeah, it's definitely heavy and a lot to unpack. And I do have like 2 follow-up questions. One, when you were saying how therapy wasn't offered, like, is that, if you feel comfortable sharing, is that something that you sought for yourself, especially having to process being told, hey, you're going to experience a miscarriage, and then, you'll have to deal with this on your own? Was that an avenue that you sought out yourself?
Not initially, no. I feel like I was focused on proving them wrong versus coming to terms with the fact that I was miscarrying. Because I wasn't spotting, I didn't have any blood. Like in my, the only reason that they had felt like I was having a miscarriage was because they couldn't find a heartbeat. But I had my first ultrasound was done at 6 weeks. So the likelihood of them finding a heartbeat that early just isn't, in general, for all women, it's not common. And so it wasn't something that should have been told to me as a miscarriage. And so I kind of put all of my energy into, like I said, like making sure, or just kind of like, if I was having a miscarriage, I needed for it to be finalized and said to me like plainly as to why it was happening. And I wasn't getting that from the professionals. But yeah, and I feel like for that alone, I probably would have ended up going to therapy. But just the fact that it wasn't offered to me and it wasn't even talked about, and no one even talked about to me like what the miscarriage would look like. I've only ever, heard, I don't want to say horror stories because it's people's real experiences, but I've just kind of heard like what you hear in the movies, or like what you hear from other people, not from a professional, about what a miscarriage could look like or would look like. So I wasn't even really sure what to look for. I just, didn't want to see blood. So I was just hoping for no blood, but I didn't know if that was the only way or how it would come out, or you mean if it was going to be a tiny little baby. I didn't, because it wasn't talked about with me, it wasn't discussed on what that would be. I was just quite literally told like, oh, we can't find a heartbeat. Yeah, that's a miscarriage. So go ahead and go home and just wait it out. And
I can imagine it's like, and I think with the media portraying so many like stories, like on movies and TV shows about like those first few weeks being so happy. And that, I don't think that's probably reality for so many women, whereas probably more with like you, where like that to me should be what is exposed to women, so that they're prepared that, it may not be the butterfly feeling that you have. It's more likely to be something that is scary or uncertain, and I think if we were given that initially, maybe that would also provide some reassurance that, this is normal to experience this, but there's other people, other women who've also felt this, and that can build a community in itself with that.
Born to Birth is a 3-part multimedia project produced by We Honor Our Own, a family program of the Better Giveback Foundation Incorporated. Through an audio podcast, an immersive retreat experience, and a musical anthology, the project aims to bring awareness to Black maternal health as a rising health issue experienced among prospective, new, and emerging mothers.
My experience went in 2016 when I went to the hospital. I had went like 3 times. All 3 times I was experiencing contractions. And it was never really addressed. Like, it was more so like, oh, we don't see anything. We'll continue to monitor it. We'll do some testing. And yeah, I understand things happen, but I also know that the actual issue that I was having with experiencing contractions could have been prevented. Because when I had my daughter, one of the main things was putting me on a prophylactic program so that I could prevent having contractions. So like any type of inflammation could be addressed right away. So those type of things didn't happen. And there was plenty of time for them to do that prior to, but it was just because I had now, because I'm considered high risk, because of my age, because of my weight, because I've already experienced early birth or going into labor early. Now we're going to do all these measures when I'm already telling you that these things need to be done. And at the very least, you could at least just try to address it one by one, not address it by saying we hear you, but actually taking measures to address it. And I always think about like when doctors do stuff, or even if I feel like somebody's being flippant, I'm like, okay, so if this was your wife, is this how you're going to handle this? If this was your sister, is this what's going to be done? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to when these doctors, when their wives and when their loved ones have babies, any little thought of anything, it's addressed immediately. And to me, if you're in healthcare, that's how you should treat everybody. It shouldn't be just VIPs only get certain treatment and then everybody else, we have to go through this protocol. And I understand there are costs involved in insurance companies and you have to get certain things cleared. But even for that, there's so much money wasted in healthcare that if we're putting the money in the right places, that we should be able to address people's actual concerns, actual like emergency situations without all this red tape, because there is a lot of money wasted on stuff that's not even necessary.
Babies die within a week or two. My actual sister, I don't think she would mind me sharing, her second baby, she had a placenta previa, which is basically like the placenta, which holds the baby. It basically had an opening. So that started to create a complication for where the baby wasn't getting proper oxygen. And baby needed to come out, but they weren't aware that was what was going on. And she was telling them that she was in pain and she was contracting, and they were misdiagnosing and misassessing the situation until it was severely late. And she did birth her baby in an emergency C-section, which was an emergency. And because it was an emergency, she had to get a C-section forever because the type of C-section he did. But I would say about a week and a half after he did pass away, just from failure to thrive and other things. And so that was very traumatic, to see my sister have a baby that she thought was going to be, alive and grow, even though he came in the world rough. You hear babies' success stories all the time. Like, oh, this baby was born 1 pound. That was not a success story, and we had to funeralize him. And I have other people that I know that their babies didn't make it, and I heard stories of women in Gloucester County, Cumberland County, Camden County, who passed away a week or two after having their baby, and young women in their 20s, in their 30s, and it shouldn't be. You would think that you could have a baby safely and that you could come home and start your life with your baby. But unfortunately, it's not always the case. And it's just something I hope that, garners a seriousness that, more healthcare initiatives can be developed, as well as people of color who are in the healthcare world would take ownership of their people's outcomes and start to create more initiatives and momentum on the current initiatives that are already going forth that can help create more positive outcomes in the future as well.
When it comes to Black women's maternal health, I believe that a lot of times we are in a position to be able to advocate for ourselves. A lot of times you figure, with me, I was a teen mom. I didn't know what was going on. You know, for most of my pregnancy, it was hidden. Right. I didn't have much support. You know, I'm going into these prenatal appointments alone by myself. And I didn't have the support that I needed at the time. And I wasn't aware of, you know, making sure that, you know, my birthing experience was an enjoyable one, and not even realizing that, you know, pregnancy and giving birth should not be treated as an emergency. You know, it can be something that is, you know, it can be something that is beautiful. It can be something that is an easy experience. It could be something that is stress-free. But a lot of times I don't believe that we are properly educated on the resources that are available to us. And it requires a little bit more on our end for sure. But I know from my experience, for my prenatal appointments, I was in and out. Going in there. I feel like the doctors knew that I didn't have much support. You know, I wasn't married. I was a young Black mom. So I didn't properly receive, you know, all of the prenatal care that I needed. It started off well, for sure, when I was just in that space and not knowing what I was going to do. I remember I went to Seton Hall University. So Seton Hall University is where I started my educational career. Then I came back home and continued at Rowan University. When I found out I was pregnant, I remember going back up to where Seton Hall was and going to the Planned Parenthood in East Orange, just to figure out, you know, what my options were and, you know, what is going on with my body, because that was my first pregnancy. I was totally shocked as far as being pregnant, and I was scared. So I went in there, you know, with, you know, an open mind to see, you know, what was available, what resources were available. Was I going to keep the baby? Was I not going to keep the baby? And they really did help me out. They pointed me in a direction of, you know, finishing my prenatal care there. But unfortunately, I went to another doctor that was closer to home back in South Jersey. And I didn't receive the proper prenatal care that I needed. And when it comes to women in the birthing room, a lot of times things happen. And, you know, emergencies happen, and we aren't well equipped to deal with those, not only just in the moment, but afterwards too. So say, for instance, you do have a traumatic birth, and thank God that the baby is born, the baby is healthy, but you still are dealing with that trauma of that traumatic birth. So how do they handle that afterwards? And a lot of times there's no follow-up for that. Just emotional piece. They worry about the physical. Is she healed? Is everything sewed up? Did we put enough stitches in? What time she going home? and usually that's it. But a lot of times we need some extra support right afterwards, especially if we're having a traumatic experience where things didn't go as planned. We need to be followed up with some type of psychological treatment for sure, or just a check-in. So I can only imagine how a lot of Black women go through just traumatic births and don't have the proper resources afterwards.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. 100% agree. And that was a very thorough explanation of the experiences of most Black women in.
Yes.
I can absolutely agree with that.
Thank you for listening to the Born to Birth podcast. We hope these stories have impacted you in a way that allow you to be more aware and compassionate of the Black maternal health conversation. We invite you to continue exploring this topic by supporting our continued work and initiatives. Consider partnering with the Better Giveback Foundation Incorporated and financially contributing towards the Born to Birth musical anthology, a music therapy resource designed to ensure Black mamas everywhere have the culturally relevant resources needed to thrive and labor well. For more information, visit borntobirth.org.